Well, good morning, everybody. It's a happy Friday, I hope, for you. An interesting Friday for me. Just having fun getting set up this morning. I had quite a few items set, ready to go when I first sat down because the news is, well, it's interesting. And I thought I would do something a little bit aligned with what Scott used to do, just because I'm trying to figure out what makes the folks most interested in my show or in the show in general. And one of the things clearly for me anyways has been the idea that I can have a conversation with you about whatever interests you. It could be politics, could be science. A lot of times for me, you're going to hear me talk about AI because that's one of my passions. Sorry, just getting all the audio stuff ironed out as we get going here. And one more time. So just to get the ball rolling here, I know some of you folks will watch from locals. So if you're on locals, I'm hopping in today and looking good on a sound. Thank you, Barry. That was yesterday. Let's see what today says. Let's go back and see how we're looking here. Should be just going live right 1 minute ago. Good. I'm just going to take a peek, make sure it's working. I'm going to make sure it's also muted because we don't want the background. That is wonderful. Thank you, Barry. I am really appreciating the extra help you guys give me on this stuff. And it looks like we're live everywhere we need to be live. So let's get going. So today, what I thought I'd do, some of the things that I've done in the past have been probably more tech-oriented things that are, interesting to me. And I admit I'm a geek. I like to call myself a geekaholic. And that's primarily because it's all things tech are my absolute fan favorite. So when I get into seeing other things, I've always held off a little bit, mostly around politics, because I'm like, that's pretty dangerous landmine to step on, especially when you're just starting out and you're trying to get folks interested. But then it dawned on me, the whole reason why folks tuned into Scott was because of his political commentary. And while I have to admit, I think I'm very similar to Scott in that regard, in terms of where I stand. And I don't think it matters where I stand as much as just being able to talk a little bit about what's going on out there in the world and having that information out front for people to really get an opinion or get their own thoughts correlated. So this morning I jumped onto, I watched an NBC. It was NBC. So they had a commentary going on from one of the folks that are tied to, partisanship, left, right, and I don't really worry about who it was unless it was particularly poignant what they said. But they were talking about these midterms, and not just the midterms, but the what do they call these? The kind of the oddball votes that are going on right now. So there's a bunch of votes where people might be resigning and they have to put somebody new in office. And there was a shift in Texas, a very far left shift. It went from like 10 points to the right with Trump, all the way down to 14 points to the left with the Democrat. And they elected somebody. And the very first and only thing this candidate said after they were elected was, "And I'm here to oppose Trump." I'm like, great. I mean, not that I don't care. You want to oppose Trump? That's fine. Do what you got to do. But I find it interesting that the only talking point was opposing Trump. There was nothing about like making it affordable for their constituencies. There was nothing about, immigration one way or the other. And there was nothing about, where our industries are going. It was only about oppose Trump. And I'm like, so if the left wins the next midterm, what this is going to be is the TDS manifesto. That to me is really what it comes down to. If you think that people are going to happily gather around and kumbaya around the fire over, let's start with some of the things, right? The mega Trump thing here. So what is mega? Mega is make elections great again. Good idea. I think that's a very good idea. I may or may not have told you, at one time I lived in California, and I've lived in many states, actually. I've lived in Massachusetts, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, California, Hawaii, Florida, Virginia, briefly Maryland, and Georgia. All right, 10 states that I've lived in. And, mostly because my family has a lot of military in their background, and I was ex-military. So now we're sitting here with all of these states. Every state has its own set of rules. And I'm used to, from the states that I had lived in, that when you vote, you bring your ID. So here I walk up to the podium or walk up to the registration where they're going to check off how I was there. And I'm like, well, how are you going to find me? And they said, well, what is your address? And I said, well, here, it's on my ID. And the lady literally recoiled like, oh my God, don't show me. And she's like, that's illegal. And this is like in 2016. Okay. It was that far back. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is bizarre. And then she's looking at my address, looked for my address, not confirming even that I had a name, just that there were 2 residents at the address, and I was one of them. That was all that mattered. And it's like, okay, so, if I told you that there were 15 people living at that address, she'd be like, well, they should come in and vote. And I'm like, okay, that just sounds great. That's wonderful. And, all I can say is if we don't do something about voter ID in our country, there is no country. President Trump often talked about having, if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. Yeah, kind of. And then when I check out these things and I'm looking online, you can't help. It's almost like a meme Monday kind of thing, but it's Friday, and I wanted to do something fun on Friday. So here we are with this perfect sign. Vote Republican. They may not be perfect, but the other side is insane. Kind of inclined to agree sometimes. And this is, I'm not trying to offend anybody here, so don't take it too harshly. If you do, I apologize. But there was some comedian that I saw who was like, "Are there any trans people in the room?" And apparently a bunch of people raised their hands. And then they said, "Any trans people in the room not on meds?" It was like, oh, no hands? Okay. And it was just like, and I'm not trying to associate trans with the entire left, okay, because that's not the case. But that just kind of, it's emblematic of something that's kind of bizarre, which is you fight for the mental illnesses of our world because you have a great deal of empathy. Totally understand. And then at the same time, you advocate fully for this trans lifestyle, which is 1% of the population. It's not even 1% of the population for the most part. You can certainly get a whole bunch of people from a fashion perspective on that bandwagon because they don't want to, they want their own style or whatever. But, realistically, the number of people who make a full-blown transition is a very small number. And for those that do, a lot of them regret it and switch back. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but it definitely is out there. So, it just kind of makes me think that there's the reality of our world is that we have to keep our, we need a clear message that is resonating with the right people. And when I say the right people, I mean the majority. The majority of the folks out there are hopefully looking forward to having fair elections, not being represented by 1% that may actually, in fact, be mentally ill in some areas, some cases. So, how do you deal with that? I don't, who knows? I mean, I don't have answers for that, but I do know that it's worth noting that you have folks that are going to struggle, and because they're empathetic, heavily empathetic with anything that looks like authority and anything that looks like common sense regulations or common sense approaches to government, because it ostracizes one tiny little segment of a small group. So now my son and I watched Man on the Moon or Man in the Moon. I'm not sure which it is. It was the Andy Kaufman story. And then I came across this, this is back when in the 90s when he was trolling, Jim Carrey was trolling the left in his comedy. I know that probably the background of the audio with that was probably blasting through. So I'm going to hold it off. But, the idea that he's, this is representing a whole crew of people that are, we've had this attitude about this left being the same ever since I can remember. It's just, you're going to have some stuff going on that gets people agitated and riled up. But then you do have these people who are agitated and riled up, and they accidentally, I love this, they accidentally invented borders as a baseline to figure out when ICE came into an area. And this is exactly, it's literally the exact same scenario. They want to keep ICE out because they don't think ICE is good. And a lot of the people in the United States are saying, we have this thing called borders so that we can keep people out to a degree, not everybody, but keep people out that might come in and harm our country. And they're saying ICE might come in and harm their region in Minneapolis, right? Same exact process. And they're going to make sure they can control who can come in and out of their neighborhoods. Isn't that exactly what ICE is there to do to begin with? It's just kind of funny. So, with that said, there are a lot of different things from an immigration perspective that kind of make you scratch your head. But moreover, it's how many things are out there. Yeah, Man on the Moon. But it's how many things are out there that make you go, huh? And then on top of that, how many people are just absolutely taking advantage of our country and taking advantage of taxpayers, right? So how is it that you go from $51,000 to $30 million in 1 year? How do you do that? Let me know. Hell, anybody on this call want to know? I would love to know. I mean, unless basically what you're doing is funneling all the money that all of us are giving up to pay taxes into somebody's checking account or their investment account. Is that what's happening? I don't know. Hopefully not, but probably. So, the parody perspective of like, here's the crew surrounding the Democrats. As Scott Adams used to say quite frequently, the Democrat Party in some respects is just a gigantic cartel. No question about it. It just, I don't know if that's true, but it sure seems like it. And if it seems like it, you ask yourself, could what seems real be real? Who knows? Who knows? So, talking a little bit about kind of current events and what's going on. we're looking at a whole bunch of things that were coming out here. And let's see here. I think we can take a look at this one. So the federal arrests are actually happening now against the ICE activists. Thank you. You know, I mean, it would be really nice. We have ICE activists being arrested. That's good because, you know, they're kind of the feet on the street trying to go after everything that we're doing as a country, trying to turn our country around and make it, what it was a little bit. I'm not saying it has to be exactly what it was by any means, because I think there's a lot out there going on that we don't like one way or the other. But there's so many good things happening. And when you basically have massive fraud and immigration out of control happening, you have to take action, right? And then if you have these folks that are out here just quasi-military going against the authorities that we've put in place, you know what stopped the vast majority of the ICE activity? When the police started keeping the actual prisoners, or not prisoners, but the actual criminals at the jail. And ICE just went to the jail and picked them up. Totally legit, right? That's exactly the way we want it. And why did it go the other way? Because the police were told to let the criminals out. And then the only way ICE could get them is to go into the neighborhoods and get them. So doing the right thing and having law enforcement work with law enforcement and not be told not to, you know, it's kind of crazy. So I think there's a lot of stuff around all of this, and I'm not the world's foremost expert on all of it, so I'm not going to try and, give the world view on all of this. But, you know, there's definitely some things that are worth noting, worth talking about on that topic. But how about some fun stuff? So here's a fun item. On February 6th, 1971, Alan Shepard went to the moon on a moon mission. You know, we got this upcoming moon mission, but he snuck a few golf balls onto the moon so that he could take a swing on the moon and see what golf might be like on the moon. And that's kind of cool, don't you think? I don't know if it's, the one problem I have is if you had a driving range on the moon and you hit the ball hard enough, it could actually go like in semi-orbit around the moon and come and clock you on the back of the head. I mean, probably wouldn't, but you know what I mean? If you hit it and it sliced to the left, it obviously would not. But if you hit a straight, perfect shot, it could definitely come all the way around. And you know, I don't know if you'd be able to hit it with enough force to make the ball actually make full orbit around the moon. But I have to know. I want to know. One of these days, somebody's going to have to go up there and do that just to find out. And since we're going to have a moon base, I'm just betting that at some point there's going to be golf on the moon. I'm not a golf fan. I'm not a golfer per se, but you know, it's too cool to think that we wouldn't do something like that. It just seems like a fun thing to do. And, one of the other things I'm trying to make sure we all kind of live, have a few good messages, especially on Friday. You know, today's a good day to start your weekend. And I think it's always well worth mentioning. I had an episode earlier this week where I talked about happiness, right? And Eleanor Roosevelt said it in like one sentence. It took me an hour to get to the point. Sorry. But it really is. Yeah, no, golf on a moon would be a fun thing to watch. And really the driving range would be probably the most hilarious, because if the balls just started flying and where are they going to land? I mean, we want to actually have cameras in the golf balls, because you got to figure out where the heck they landed, and a radio sensor so you can find them. So, but anyways, happiness is not a goal. It is a byproduct of a well-lived life, or a life well lived. And that, to me, strikes me as just the right thing to be pointing out. You know, you can't chase happiness. You can't achieve happiness. It's not a goal. It's not you can make a goal of it, but it's always the thing when you get there, you want the next thing, right? So it makes me happy today to think about silly things like golf on the moon, right? I don't think if it becomes a national, like a real thing, and they start actually having it, I'm sure we'll all watch it for a couple of episodes, and then we'll be like, okay, yeah, nah, it's whatever. It's still like watching paint dry, for those who are not golf fans. I mean, for those who are golf fans, I'm sure it'd be very interesting. But to be able to know that the minute, if your happiness was to have golf on the moon and then you got it, would you still be happy, or would you be like, well, what about football on the moon? Wouldn't that be cool? You just got to go to the next thing, right? That's to me, that's the idea of chasing happiness. If the end point of the goal is where you reach happiness, when you get there, you're going to look around and go, this isn't what I was expecting. This isn't what I hoped. I want more. And you got to go chase off to something else. That's okay. That's all good. Now, this one here, this goes to the episode that I had earlier this week on investing and investments. When we looked at the stock portfolio that day, and by the way, I am going to take I stream every day, rain or shine, same time, same place. So, Wolfman, that's if you were asking. And I am going to pause. I'm going to talk about this in a second, but I didn't do anything. I'm still trying to come up with my own thought on having the simultaneous sip. But today, I'm going to try it just for the heck of it. So for those of you who are on the stream, those of you watching watching on video, you can do this yourself. But I'm going to say, let's grab a cup of coffee and, take advantage of what might be the finest moment of your day and have a quick simultaneous sip. Today, usually I drink iced coffee, but I'll be quite honest. I got a little bit creative today because I brewed some iced coffee. It was weak. It just wasn't strong enough for me. I like a really good, strong cup of coffee, and I needed a hot cup of coffee. So, all day, all year, forever. By the way, I will be going on a cruise in June, and it's a 30 to 40 day cruise. My wife won a whole bunch of things, and so we're going to go on a cruise. So I will be taking this on the water, coming from around Europe, which will be interesting because it'll be like 5:00 for me to do those streams, and I'm hoping it won't be right in the middle of something my wife wants me to do. So I may end up like recording all my streams on that event because I may not be able to come out live during that event. But whatever, we'll figure it out when we get there. But for those of you with a cup in your hand and those of you who are thinking about one, let's have a simultaneous sip of our own and look forward to some nice, good smelling, warm coffee. If you put stuff in yours like I do, some people use whiskey. I don't. I put in creamer, and I like the caramel flavor. So to you, let's all do it. 1, 2, 3, go. And I promise someday soon I will make up my own little simultaneous sip that I feel is appropriate because I don't want to steal from Scott Adams. I love the guy. I'm inspired by him, but I'm not trying to be him. So that is the idea. And you know what? That was so damn good. I'm doing a second sip on the second sip, okay? Yeah, I like coffee. Coffee's, I don't know how many different ways we can figure out that coffee's good for you. One thing I do know, if you use a French press, there's no paper filter in this. So when you press it down, you get all of the flavor and all of the essential oils that are in the coffee. And I don't always use a French press. I actually use a drip coffee pot for the most part. But this one, I had coffee made already, and it looked weak. It just looked horribly weak. And I was like, I don't know what here, this is not going to work. So, you've seen me with these quart mug cups or whatever. They're a quart jar. It's a mason jar. And I'll have coffee with that sometimes. So I took one of those, filled it with the weak coffee, put it in the microwave, got it nice and hot. And then I put it into my French press with more coffee at the bottom because it was not strong enough. And now you can see that. I don't know if you can see just how dark that coffee is, but that's coffee that's worth drinking right there. So anyways, on to the topics du jour from our cheers and delectable moment of coffee consumption. So the tech giants put out this press release more or less 2 hours ago before the opening of the market, I believe, or maybe around the opening of the market. And they're talking about over $600 billion CapEx expenditure in AI. And when you think about that, that's, quite a bit of money. Who's spending what? Google's dumping 175 to 185 billion, 102% increase year over year. Amazon is up 18% in terms of their investment, 146 billion. I told you about this the other day. They're the sleeper. They're quiet. They haven't really done anything yet. And now they're going to come out with some serious investment. They're not going to just sit back. They had Amazon Alexa, which was effectively a game changer for the vast majority of us. I mean, how many things you can say? I got an Alexa over here, but by the way, I keep it on mute because I don't want it listening to everything I say. It's listening anyways, but whatever. You know how bad the listening is on Alexa, or maybe it's our phones. My wife and I last night were talking. I went to Outback on maybe Monday night, I think, and I had a steak, and we were both sharing. We share our meals there because it's just. We don't need to eat that much because otherwise we become much bigger people. And I was eating this steak and I took a bite and the teeth on the top left side just like hurt. I was like, what the heck is going on here? I have really good teeth, but I did have a period of time when my thyroid condition kicked in. My teeth all went to crap. And so I got about 6 or 7 fillings. Up to that point, I was 26 years old when that happened. Up to that point, I'd never had a cavity in my life. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting the heat pain. And I'm like, this is not cool. So we come home and we're talking about it. And she goes, do you use like toothpaste that's like a sensitive toothpaste? Because, we have like a split bathroom setup. She's got one and I've got another. So she doesn't even know how I do my morning ablutions or whatever. So I'm brushing my teeth with basically mouthwash, right? I put a sip of mouthwash and then I brush. And you always have to brush. It's a mechanical thing to knock the plaque off. But the mouthwash gets between your teeth where your pastes don't always get, right? And I also just don't like the taste of most toothpastes. They're just not that good. So we're talking about this. And then next thing you know, on TV, right in front of us, is a huge advertisement for mouthwash. I'm looking at my Alexa. Like, and the first thing you want to ask is, will you stop eavesdropping on me? And it's, it's probably the phone and not the Alexa. But yeah, I've tried the electric toothbrush, but here's my problem with an electric toothbrush. If you're too hard, you push your gums up, right? You recede the gum line. So unless you have a super light touch with a electric toothbrush, you can push your gum line up. And like I said, I have pretty good teeth and I want to keep them. And pushing up the gum lines, unfortunately, at one time I chewed tobacco and I used the dip in the front lip. So I have this receded gum line already on the bottom, and I don't want that to continue. So the dentist said, don't brush with hard toothbrushes. And then so funny. We're talking about an electric toothbrush, and somebody just went crazy outside with a chainsaw. Sounded just like a toothbrush. It's like serendipity. But anyways, it was just, I had to be careful on that front. So Anyways, I digress on all of this. The reason that I brought all of that up is I was talking about Amazon, and I've got this Alexa over here, which I have the mute button on so that it's not listening. And yet somehow to see how quickly, like instantaneously, if you're watching TV, that the ads change right in front of your eyes based on what you're talking about. It's just it's unnerving, but moreover, it's annoying, frustrating, especially when you consider that when you talk to that thing. Have you ever asked Alexa to do anything and, or, like put something on a list for you or turn on a light or worse, like what's the weather going to be? I do that all the time. Right. And the minute you do it, it comes back sometimes with like, well, the stock market in China. It's like, I didn't talk about the stock market in China. Will you cut it out? It's like, listen, and it doesn't listen, or it can't listen, or I'm not speaking clearly enough, whatever. But anyways, Amazon had this lead for the longest time with Alexa. And because they didn't make a massive investment in AI, maybe it was appropriate because they probably didn't have the research teams to do it. But what a miss, because now they're giving up all of that headway that they had, because look at the surge Alphabet has. I mean, the money that they've made, not just what they're investing, but where they went so fast. Google's literally the number one investment across the board when it comes to AI right now. The next best is Grok, but and Microsoft after that, I think. But it's just the ground that they lost. It's crazy. And then Meta, Facebook, they're trying to not become the has-been. Facebook is falling out of favor in a lot of places, a lot of ways. I used to have a Facebook account and I stopped using it for the most part because I just can't stand the algorithm shoving all this stupid stuff in my face that I don't want to see. So I just stopped using it. I went over to X, and the good news with X from my perspective is you can really tune your feed and tune the algorithm. So I like getting a better place on my feed with X, getting exactly what I'm expecting. Now, that does mean I have a bubble, right? But I acknowledge that. I know that. And that is what it is. But I also know how to tune it. And, that's one of the reasons why I watched NBC this morning, because I don't want to totally consume all pro-right, everything right. Because if you do, you're not sure what's going on the other side. And that's where this whole thing about the Texas race going left, it's a big deal, really big deal. But here, Microsoft obviously is another big one, putting a 64% in. And then Tesla, 135%. And that's the biggest investment year over year, $20 billion. Doesn't seem like much, but their overall investment is huge. And then Apple jumping in here at $14 billion. Apple might, pull it out because of the fact that they've waited, and they're now partnering with Google. They're going to ride the coattails up and give us a fantastic user experience. They're not going to worry about the AI. They're going to worry about the user experience. And that's where the money is, if you ask me. So why does all of that matter? Well, look at all that green today. A couple of days ago, all of this was red. The entire thing was red, and I think we talked about why. There were a whole bunch of reasons why. Anthropic made some announcements that took all of the tech stocks right into the dumps. And, that was pretty harsh, pretty hardcore. But I don't know if any of you did buy anything. I hope you did, because, when I look at it, I made a purchase yesterday, a small purchase. And, I bought at the very bottom of this. It was, when I purchased, it was actually $3.80. It was down here. And so I've already made my money back. And that's the way, you can't predict, you can't time the market. I'm not a brilliant person. I actually pulled some money out for a purpose. I was going to use it for something, and I still am. But I had the liquid cash sitting there in my account. And I'm like, that's the lowest Tesla's been in well, if you look at it again, that price that I got it at, it hadn't been below 400 since September. All of this time, this is a long tail, right? You're not looking at month to month here. You're looking at, that was like a full long term. But let's bring this to, so today is not June. Let's get out there. Not sure why we're not. There we go. To the far right of this. There we go. All the way to today. There we go. So now, when you look at today, and you go back September, that's the last time we saw a price under $400, basically. So when I saw that, and I had liquid cash in my account, I was like, "Yep, making a buy." And like I said, it's a great return. So these are the kind of patterns, if you are aware of them, if you pay attention to them, if you're lucky, you can pull some really cool moves. I don't know that I don't want to be the one to give you any kind of financial advice, but you can watch these patterns. Like you can watch the quarters and see when the announcements. That's why, like when a tech announcements come out, I have a little feed that tells me that there's going to be, earnings announcements. And I just watch, because inevitably what happens is you start off with something going up because of good news. They do a little bit of pump and everything goes up. And then, the earnings are coming. Before the earnings are announced, somebody's already summarized it because they put the paperwork out ahead of time. And if you pay attention to the people who are reading that early, or if you just go read it yourself and you pay attention to what's in there, you can say, all right, I see the numbers going up, but based on these announcements, it's going to either go way up or it's going to go way down, because you can see kind of the pattern quarter over quarter, year over year, right? So if you're able to figure these things out, it behooves you to pick a stock of your choice, follow it closely, model it. There are a lot of, one of the reasons why I personally liked Tesla is because there's so many people talking about it that they've got models, and I was able to kind of build my own model, observe their models and go, yeah, I think I can jump into this. My gut kind of wrenches every time it goes way up and way down, but whatever. You learn, you figure. And hopefully you don't have to be making massive investments to make moderate gains. You can do small little chunks of this, that, and the other, and maybe improve your lot in life as a financial person. But not everything is, in the rose garden. But here again, this is one of those things. If you saw this, and I don't know what it is today, this is yesterday, I believe, or it's late. It's 3 hours ago, but still a $10,000 drop. Talk about volatility. Look at how these tiny little bumps and drops happen. It's a couple $100, $10, $20, but a $10,000 value drop in Bitcoin. Now, what does that tell you? I don't know exactly what it means, but that usually means somebody sold something massive, right? Somebody took they saw this, the tumble starting, and they said, take profit, take profit, take profit, take profit. And they just took their money out before it was gone, before it went way down. But $1 trillion in market cap, just taken off the market. And that's, this kind of noise a sell-off makes. It's the kind of thing that when it happens, you don't want to be at the tail end of that. But if you can catch it while it's down, and it's going to come back up eventually, that's the one thing. It doesn't matter what your investment is. Eventually, it'll come back up. So let's go a little bit back to political talk here. Donald Trump. I thought this was funny. I don't necessarily know what his specific criticism was, but he calls Representative Tom Massey a moron over the policy disagreements. You can't have a more persuasive position than Donald Trump. I mean, the guy is just like, he's a moron. Let's see if I can do it. We're listening to all of the things you had to say, Thomas Massey, and you're a moron. I don't know if that's how he said it, but it's just kind of amazing what he gets away with at the top of the ticket, But one of the things that when you look at why he said that, it just has to do with kind of being a semi-leader of the right side that are ineffectual or waffling, going back and forth on things. And the big thing that he said here, that the big thing about this prayer breakfast that was interesting was that he was going to rededicate America as a nation under God. And, that it's kind of a Christian-oriented perspective. I think I've said it before. I am a bit more of an atheist than I am a Christian. And I don't want to say that heavily because I'm, I was born Roman Catholic and baptized and raised Christian. But I've had so many hardcore Christian fundamentalists try and pummel me into telling me everything that I'm supposed to be, everything I'm supposed to do, everything I'm supposed to believe, that it drove me away. It just made me feel like this is not where I want to be. This is not what I'm going to do. You can take your, far right perspective in that area, far religious. I won't say far right. You can take your religious perspective and just go away because, when it was this conversation, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior? And it was every single day I got in a carpool, going to college, on a college, not when I was in college, early, young, I was in the military, but I was taking classes and I was carpooling with another student. And this person would not, every single day, almost like he didn't believe me. He's like, do you take Jesus Christ as your Savior, blah, blah, blah. First time, maybe second time, I said yes, right? And I did. I was actually very faith-oriented at that point in my life. But every day for 90 days, come on. It's like, I started to go, do you have a mental illness that you have to keep? Do you not believe me? Why do you not believe me? What is your purpose? You can't read my mind. Even if I said yes, how would you know? It's impossible. And I got to the point where I literally said, get out of my car. I don't want you to be in this. I'm not going to pick you up anymore. But it just has to do with the bad behavior of one or two people that can totally sour you on a whole perspective, And so that's what happened. So but I do think that the Judeo-Christian principles that we have in our country around, freedom of speech, that we need to be giving justice a blindfold to make sure that we don't pick and choose our winners based on anything, whether it be race, religion, politics, doesn't matter. We need to be able to step back from that and say, this is not how we do justice in this country. So yeah. And Wolfman, I'm looking at your posts here about, silver and gold, moving those assets offshore. Don't you wonder what happened to, let's go find out what's in Fort Knox last year? It was both Trump and Musk were saying, yeah, we're going to go down there and check it out. And then it just went dead silent. What happened to that? Why? Why did that happen? I just don't know. It's like, that's pretty scary. But, if we're going to put Bitcoin behind our currency, there was some speculation that I heard yesterday on a couple of shows. It's Barry Goodman or something, good, whatever his name is. He was speculating based on some observations of the, the Epstein files. There's some references that make people think that Satoshi Nakamura is actually Epstein, or one of the Epstein acolytes. And they were using it to debase the currency so that they could actually have bring communism to the United States, because Bitcoin ultimately could become a communism mechanism, because everything is monitored, everything is under control, everything is in the hands of the government at that point when they own the currency. So yeah, kind of a scary one. Taking another sip for those of you interested. So if you're up for another sip, grab your cup. So, with all of the stuff that's going on out there, you can't pass up a moment to talk about another narco trafficking vessel taken out in the Eastern Pacific. This is not in the Gulf. It's outside the Gulf, over on the Pacific side of the world. We don't need to watch the video per se, but, definitely something to know that it continues. And I'm glad it's continuing, because what better deterrent, when Scott lost his stepson, Scott Adams, at the exact same time, I lost my son. And, my son is, he would be 36 this year. But yeah, it was a result of fentanyl. He had schizophrenia, and his meds were being administered, had hit the person administering his meds was no longer there. And as a result, he went off a little bit, and some things happened that put him in the wrong context. And he ended up overdosing and died. And it was, it's horrible. My youngest son still has to deal with that outcome. He's the one who found him. And, it's very, very brutal to have that kind of a thing happen. I wasn't there, unfortunately. And the person that gave it to him has also passed. So the idea that we're cutting that traffic down and out does not make me cry one whit. I know it's probably not a popular thing for some people, but I will say that there's no question that having somebody pushing, cutting out that traffic from our country is going to save thousands and thousands of lives. And I'm glad to see it continue. But on a topic of drugs, have any of you gone to the new Trump RX website yet? Because if you haven't, check it out. There's not all the drugs that you could possibly get are available on this site, but you can get your prescriptions transferred over in here and get some discounts, apparently. I don't know that they have, you really have to do some apples to apples comparisons, drug by drug, to know if it's even working. I sure hope it is, because there are people that need medications in this country, and we've been paying, it's obscene. My uncle was on a drug that was $1,000 a pill. $1,000 a pill. Can you believe that? It's nuts. And, he basically chose hospice because he had some cash stored up. He owned a business. He was dying of cancer, and he went into hospice and said, just look, cut off all, I don't want to be, he was in a tough spot. So they cut off his, they didn't feed him. They didn't hydrate him, and kept him in a drugged up state so that he could pass away painlessly. But for those watching, it was horrible. And, the whole thing is if that drug had been available, he'd probably still be with us. He was 58 years old. Just crazy. That's how old I am, So I really hope this pans out into positivity for people that are out there. And I will tell you, these like the Wegovy, Ozempic, Zepbound, that's good. That really is, because I personally struggled. I have a thyroid condition that my thyroid was ablated when I was 27 years old. And I know. But I don't have a thyroid function, so I have to take replacement thyroid pills. And when you take thyroid medicine, the generics, the cheapo generics, sad fact, if you read the fine print on some of those generic thyroid medicines, the side effect, the most prominent side effect is binge eating. I mean, can you believe this? The medicine that essentially regulates your metabolism that would effectively keep you thin. When my thyroid was hyperactive, I weighed 125 pounds at 6'1". It was ridiculous. You could count all the ribs on the front and back of me. It was crazy. Now, they ablated my thyroid and I take the replacement, and I went from 125 pounds ultimately to 275 pounds. I mean, it was just like staggering. And my knees had problems, my back had problems, all kinds of things, just because I put on so much weight. And I tried to control it with diet, but I'm sorry, when your thyroid's out of whack, it's very difficult. And especially when your thyroid medicine is making you binge eat. So, but I had two benefits come along in my life. Number one, I listened to Scott Adams, and Scott Adams pointed out that alcohol is poison. I learned that and agreed with it, and was able to put that out of my life, for the most part. I won't say that I never raise a toast with people. More often than not, it's coffee, but if it's at 10 o'clock at night, I'm not going to have a cup of coffee because I'll never go to sleep. So, sure, I might have a champagne once in a blue moon, or if somebody gives me something to drink that's not too strong, I might have it, But I also have discovered, sadly, that even having 2 drinks is enough to put my heart in AFib, which is crazy. It's nuts. So I don't drink, period. And but I was able to bring my weight down because I was able to take medicines like this to reduce my weight, and I'm down almost 75 pounds. So I'm grateful for these medicines, even if they're not, what it really did more than anything was change my, by making me able to eat less per meal. Like I didn't have this overwhelming urge to eat. I was able to just cut my diet, cut my intake of food down dramatically. And I will tell you, I take, I have these little pills here, right? These are, I forget what the name of it is, but they're glucosamine, I think. It's basically an appetite suppressant, and it works quite well. So I'm able to have 1 meal a day, maybe 1.5, 2 meals a day. So that said, things are in a much better place. And yes, I went keto as well. I cut out almost all carbs. So it was that is a big deal. But these pills or these shots, whatever you take, they are potent and they work. So not trying to promote them. I'm just trying to tell you that some things aren't as bad as they sound, especially when you have an actual issue like taking a drug that gives you a binge eating urge, or having a metabolic condition that causes you to just gain weight when you look sideways at food. So let's take a look at a couple of other things real quick. We're going to wrap up pretty soon because we're getting to the top of the hour here. But I thought this was really good. This is the PowerShare grid support in Texas. Now, what this is if you buy the Tesla batteries for your house, they are, and your Cybertruck, if you had a Cybertruck, also has massive batteries in it. You can plug the Cybertruck into your house and it'll become part of the grid power offset. So one thing, whatever you say about California, good or bad, I will say this. I was there when their grid issues were happening, and they were throttling power and doing minor brownouts in part to prevent fires in California. And it was, pretty bad because you just have an afternoon of no power for no reason, right? Especially if you were in a rural area, there's only one power line coming into you and you were in trouble. So, yeah, hey, good to see you, Fiorella. I hope you have a chance to go back and see some of the fun stuff. If you get a chance later, I'll post the video after it's all done on YouTube. But anyways, this Cybertruck PowerShare, the whole thing with it was it if your batteries were connected to the grid and you were on the grid power share, you could technically power your neighbors' homes, small areas for periods of time. And that was pretty good because literally it stopped the brownouts. So you'd have the big power plants pushing major power down the lines, but they were able to cut it down or cut it off. And the lines that were going through the forested areas that were most likely to go up in flame because of sparks from the grid stopped because they were able to either reroute the power or just shut it off for periods of time. And regional power grids were able to support themselves because of these offline individual home-owned battery systems. And it was really interesting because happy to be consistent, happy to be out here. And I'm just in case any of you are wondering, these side comments, I do have a chat going on a side and I'm paying attention to it so that some of you can say a word or two. And I'll just put that over here again, like I did yesterday. So you can see your own chats coming in. The good on this is kind of a filtered chat. So if I was on what do you call it? Locals. There's something about locals that's really cool. And if you're in the stream on locals, locals users can put emojis and pictures in their chats. So that's one really cool reason to be in the locals channel. Because if you subscribe to the Second Sip and you jump in here and it's like cheap, I don't know, free, if not cheap. And I don't know if there is a barrier to entry there for anybody, but if you're part of it, you can go into this chat and you can post with memes and stickers and things like that. And when Scott did his show, he always had this up on the side, but he always kept it off screen because sometimes it would be a little too spicy for the mainstream or for his broadcast. So instead, I'm using the sidebar here, and this one doesn't include the meme pictures, but it still lets you, and anybody posting from YouTube, Rumble, you can see obviously where folks are posting from. If you ever want to really enhance that experience, I do encourage you to join over on Locals because that chat can get spicy and it can get funny. Especially when people start putting memes in there that are just hilarious, So especially like in the morning, Scott would start his show and people would start posting dog pictures and cat pictures, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's cute," And I would do that if you guys jump in and decide you want to use the locals chat as well. Not so much. I'm not going to go all the time, but I'll look at your meme postings and react to them a bit like he did. But anyways, this power grid thing, what this tells you is that if you spend the money to get the battery backup for your house, that you could effectively be helping support upgrade our grid across the board. It's a worthy investment. Realistically, buying one of these things, when you use it properly, what you will do is charge up at night when the rate for electricity is lowest, and then when the price goes up during the day, you'll stop taking power from the grid and you'll run off of your battery for the house. And what that does for you is it makes sure that when you are paying for electricity, you're paying the lowest possible price. Always, because you stored a bunch and you paid for the low price because it was actually at 15 cents a kilowatt hour versus say 50 cents. It could be that big a difference, So well worth considering. Not a cheap investment, but you can finance it, and then it basically it'll reduce your electric bill by close to the same amount as the amount you're going to pay in the financing. So it's a wash, and you end up, you'll pay less for your electricity, a little bit of money for this, and the two together should be less than your original electric bill. I'm looking into this myself because my electric bill in the summertime with AC, living here in Florida, when it gets over 100 degrees, I'm looking at sometimes $300-400 a month for electricity, and that's a lot. So if I can offset it like this, that would be fantastic. And I am really hoping, I'm hoping that they will consider bringing some of the incentives back. I don't like making other taxpayers pay for me to have this, but when you consider that my grid, my power supplied back to the grid could actually support the grid to a degree when we have power outages, then I think it's actually the whole region investing in upgrading its local grid. So I don't feel as guilty about a subsidy that supports this as I would, say, an oil subsidy so that they can put a gas, or gas subsidy for a gas burning power plant down the street. So anyways, not necessarily trying to advocate for spending more of our taxpayer dollars in a way that taxpayers might not like. So we'll get off of that. But, there are some things that I think are worth looking at. And then this one here, when you talk about the Muslim religion in general, I think you won't be talking about a negative thing, right? It's Muslim as a whole. The Muslim Islamic religion is not necessarily bad per se, but outfits like the Muslim Brotherhood, who are militant and more prone to trying to impose Sharia law on local communities, that's not good. And there was just a few weeks back, there was a situation right here down the street from where I live, where they were trying to buy, a Muslim organization was trying to buy 10 acres of land so that they could put a church and a school on it. And all I can think, and by the way, part of it was in the ordinance, they were trying to make sure that they could broadcast prayers 5 times a day on that property. And I just, I don't mind people. This is a free country. Our country is founded on the principle that you should be able to practice your religion without persecution. But when your country is going to be overrun by the militant arm of a religion, I get a little bit of a headache about that. That's not that. I mean, if you told me all of a sudden that the Catholic Church was going to send in troops, or the Christianity was going to have Christian soldiers running around and terrorizing people because they aren't practicing those faiths, I'd be just as against it. But, that's the problem I have with those areas, those things that are happening. They're a concern. This is interesting, isn't it? Drones supporting first responders. I think this is probably, this could be a good development. It's a scary development, but it could be a good development, because today, if you need help, you call the police. How long does it take them to get something in the region to go check your house out? And if somebody's trying to break into your house and you call the police 911 and it's going to be 15 minutes before somebody gets there to help you, wouldn't it be nice if they could actually have, some 2 or 3 centralized drone launch facilities in your town or in your city, where within 2.5 minutes, you can have somebody observing the outside of your house to determine if somebody's really trying to break in? That would be huge. I mean, as a citizen, on the positive side, I like this. As a criminal, I'd hate this. If I were quasi-criminal, if I was worried about my behavior and my actions, I would not like this, right? And if our government became a militant state, AKA something like this, I would hate it. Because now, what if the drones are being operated by the Muslim Brotherhood to find out where you're going and what you're doing, or let's take that aside and put that aside for a minute. Let's forget about that, because that's just too scary. But what about, what was the other one that we looked at here earlier? This one. What if you had a bunch of protesters in your town and they took over the drones and they started using the drones to monitor where your legal group went? Well, they did that. They actually did that, and they did it in other ways too. They didn't use that many drones, but apparently there were some drones used to try and track where ICE was going and things like that. And that's a militant group. That doesn't belong in our country. I'm sorry. We need a strong federal. We need a strong state representation from our military. You know why it's great to have a state-run National Guard? Because it's your next door neighbor. They all care about you. They care about us. They care about our neighborhoods, right? So when somebody sends the National Guard in, it's your neighbors who are coming in. It's not some foreign power coming in or some troop from across the ocean. It's not a mercenary. It's your next door neighbors coming in. So I have to say that part I do like. But yeah, RoboCop. And I know it's pretty scary. I would say as long as it's observational and not deploying weapons, I'm kind of okay. You know, I had a period of time this last year where I had a medical situation and I had to get picked up and taken to the hospital. And it was just a quick, it was when I didn't know what AFib was doing, what AFib is, and I had a moment and I had to get brought to the hospital. So an ambulance showed up, but I had to sit there laying in bed with my heart going all nuts for a good half hour. And, I'm just waiting. At first it was me just going, I don't know if I should call anybody. And then, yep, I'm going to call somebody. And they showed up and they helped me and it was great. It was a blessing. But if that wasn't the most urgent thing in the world, I survived, obviously. It had nothing, it was not going to have an impact on my life or death situation. Thankfully, the condition was a lot less serious than I thought it was. And that's a blessing. But if it were somebody breaking into my house or somebody snooping around, here's the thing. Where I live, we had reports very recently of people kind of doing the ding-dong ditch to find out who was home. Because this is Florida, and about a third of the people, maybe half of the people here, are snowbirds. They leave for half the year and they come back. So there are people actually looking forward to finding people's homes to break into because they're not here, right? In some states, that's pretty scary. Not necessarily Florida, but in some states, if a squatter hops in your house and lives in your house for over a month, and you didn't kick them out because you're a snowbird, they can keep your house. It takes 6 months to get them out. It's nuts. I mean, some of the laws that we have in some strange states. But I'm very grateful to have here in this state laws that say if I defend my home, I'm not going to be put in jail for it. But if I need law enforcement, if I need it now, I would like to be able to call somebody. And I know I don't disagree with you, Kitten. It's a strong no in a sense that I don't need people snooping me. But, if I look out and I see on the skyline a bunch of drones hovering around, I got a problem with that. I agree. But if I dial 911, I don't see any drones, and then all of a sudden, zoom, here comes one. I'm going to be pretty happy about that, right? Because I called 911. If I have this nice broad set of windows here, and I can see my neighborhood, 5-6 houses in front of me down, across the way. And if I saw somebody snooping around that didn't look right, well, I'm kind of semi-neighborhood watch. That's easy. I can call somebody and say, hey, somebody's in the back of your house. Is that okay? But outside of that, it would be nice to know that I could dial 911 or push a button and somebody would just observe other than me. That'd be kind of a nice thing. So again, it all depends on who controls it, and it all depends on the what's behind it. and you can't afford for it to be taken over by militants or negative people that are going to do us harm. So, a couple other topics, and then we're going to wrap it up here. So, the Artemis mission, they're getting ready. Looks like we're talking February 11th for a launch. At least the crew is targeting that, and this is to, for what their plan is. I think the mission is going to launch in March. It's not going to launch in February. So I'm hoping it's March, honestly, because I'd like to go watch it with my son. It would be a nice thing. Now, how about this one? We'll look at this one because we talked about tech a little bit. And what this really has to do with is that distributed architectures for compute could make the cost of software and the cost of inference, which is calculation, essentially doing the AI calculations, go to zero. I know that's like weird, but the perspective is every single Tesla that's out there has a computer in it. And if that computer can be partially used in between its trips for compute, plus any device you have, I've got like 5 devices around me right now. If those devices could contribute to compute, it could actually reduce cost to zero. So that's kind of a big deal. Reducing the cost of anything, it effectively expands the potential for services to be offered to us for free or low cost. And then 2 other things. I'm going to get to the very last thing last, and then we'll call it a day. But I have this. If you haven't seen this feature, this capability on X, you should definitely check it out. So there are 289 people on this list. I put this list together myself. 289 members. The members are basically the people sitting in this room. So when I look through this, I'm seeing posts that are made by senators and representatives around the country. So I can actually scroll through this and see what's going on. So you've got folks like this one trying to provide inspection and oversight to where they're holding people. They obviously this is against the one big beautiful bill and whatnot. So it's it's a big deal to be able to see stuff like this. Looks like more and more information's coming out about companies linked to Ilhan Omar, podcasts from the inside of the Beltway, then who's being interviewed on Fox, things that have happened, victims of Chaz shootings. This is this is one of the Chaz shooting victims. If you remember Chaz, that's the demilitarized zone that the Democrat or the left people in Seattle, Washington created during the Summer of Love. And what nobody told you about all of those events is that people were getting raped and I don't know if they were killed, but this person got shot because they went into that zone, and it was completely run by effectively criminals, and people got hurt, and now they're suing Seattle for $30 million. It's too bad they have to sue the city, and they couldn't actually hold the people who created it hostage. Memes, sorry. Then you've got all of these. So the whole point is, though, you've got these lists where you can check out what's going on, and the way to do it, if you're interested, is you can go find somebody like Scoble. He's got a ton of these things. So Robert Scoble. So when you go to Robert Scoble's profile, you can look at I believe you can look at the lists where I think you can, not sure. No, I'm not sure where but he published a bunch of, I remember how to do it now. You go to your lists list, right? You got to go to the triple dot on X and go up to lists. And then when you get here, you can search the lists and you can type in Scoble. Nope, can't find them. So, but you can search the topics. There are a variety of topics over here, like politics. So when you look for these, what I like to do is look for the ones that are heavily populated, and then who composed the list. So in this case, I think that's his handle. I don't really know. But anyways, you can hunt through these and find some of these lists that are pretty interesting. And once you join or you have one of these lists at your disposal, what you're able to look at is, you can create a list that actually gives you access to feeds of all of these different people that are on the list. And that's really what this one was. And it takes a long time to add people because you got to do it one at a time. And once you add them, then you can see all their posts and everything that they're saying, So here's her meme. So did groceries drop? Numerous grocery prices have gone down. Have you seen Donald Trump's own Bureau of Labor Statistics that grocery prices are 2.4% higher at the end of 2025 than at the end of 2024? Yeah, maybe. So yeah, she had a couple of hard hitting memes that she had to post over here, which that if you're looking at both sides, that's what you're going to see. So, and I do like looking at both sides. I don't want to see just one side because then I feel like I'm totally in an echo chamber and I'm not listening or seeing what's going on. But, the vast majority of folks who are complaining about ICE are left-leaning. The vast majority of people that are complaining about Trump are left-leaning, as you would expect. But when you look at this one, Senator Markey, I think he's complaining here about, what's his name? Robert Kennedy. That, what are you going to do? He's going to tick people off one way or the other. So if you can get access to some of these lists, it gives you an insight where you can scroll through this stuff and really pick up some big insights. So last topic, and then we're going to wrap it up. And that is, the pizza activity at the Pentagon is going through the roof. And what is that all about? When you order lots of pizzas late night at the Pentagon, it's probably because you are about to do something militarily in our country. So if that's true, okay. I don't know if that's a bad thing, right? Maybe we need to help out. But if you're going to put ground troops in Israel, or I'm sorry, in Iran, I think there are going to be a lot of people concerned about that. But if you take a military action that is not about putting troops on the ground, maybe that's not so bad, right? But it's kind of funny how we can have this Pentagon pizza index to indicate what's going on out there, the same way that you can have telltales about what's going on in a finance world through the betting markets, and what's happening politically through the betting markets. It's just these little telltales that give you hints about what's going on in the world sometimes are like, how did you figure that out? So anyways, I think I've come to the end of everything that I had prepared here and things that I could talk about. I could definitely talk on and on simply because, I talk a lot anyways. I'm pretty good at it, at yappity yap. But good news is, looks like some of the stuff is coming up again.